I think that the oppressor in this case is to tell people who they need to be and who they are. And I think that the most anti colonial act that you can do is unapologetically express yourself.
Content warnings for this episode include racism, dysphoria, experiences with anti-gay and anti-trans bigotry, mental health, ableism, bullying, and disconnecting from toxic family.
Genderful would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests live and have dwelt upon. Today we honor the
Salish.
Mohawk, Algonquin, and Anishinabewaki.
And the Wabanaki people.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and my pronouns are she, her.
The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, two-spirit, and gender-diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender-diverse community.
We want our audience to know that we hold multiple diverse identities and bring these lenses to the show with our passion for telling our stories.
I identify as non-binary, transmasculine, polyamorous, ADHD, autistic, and disabled with chronic pain and mobility issues. I also am white and reside in the United States.
I identify as trans feminine, neurodivergent, queer, and a person of color residing in Canada. We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There's no social or medical prerequisite to be included in the community. Welcome to GenderfulPodcast, a show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. This week, our guest, BuffCat, she and he pronouns, is chatting with us about queer storytelling. Welcome to Genderful, BuffCat.
Hello. Nice to see everybody.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. So we have a couple of questions that we'd like to ask all of our guests. The first one being, what would be some of the things you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
Oh, there are definitely a lot of things. I think it started for me when I was around 3 or 4 years old. And I would go and visit my uncle who lived with like his 4 boyfriends in Provincetown. And he would take me to like he worked at a drag bar, and he'd kind of be like, well, it's not like I have a babysitter, so just sit on the bar. And I'd see these people kind of expressing gender in a whole myriad of different ways. And I was just like enamored. And it really helped me self-reflect on myself and my body. And I had a tendency to feel more like a boy some days, and then more like a girl other days. And I didn't really have the words to describe that experience. And it was also like I was a kid, so I think I just kind of was like, well, this is just everyone probably feels this way, you know?
Yeah.
Just like when I was a kid, I was like, well, surely everyone is just attracted to whoever they're attracted to, as long as they like each other. And then, I mean, it was the late 90s and early 2000s, and I quickly realized that was not, the common narrative. And so that was kind of where it started for me, is where I started questioning, the binary of it. It didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, and that's remarkably common amongst queer and trans folks. Is like you grow up thinking that like, oh, everyone's like this, right? And people are like, no. So it's like that was like personally that was a huge realization to me. It's like, what do you mean like not everyone likes to fantasize about being a different gender? It's like
Yeah.
No, only trans people do that. So
I don't know if you ever read like Ranma One Half. Did you ever like read or
boy,
watch it?
Yes.
So I actually have a whole video about that. So
It like changed my brain. And also not just that, it was Sailor Moon too. Like those were the two shows that I was like, oh my God. Because the idea of being able to just pour water on myself and be a boy or a girl, I was like, that is
Oh
completely
my
it. Thank
God.
you.
After this show, I'm gonna send you my video and you're gonna love
Please
it.
do.
I promise.
I will absolutely eat it up. I'll eat
Yes.
it up.
Yum, yum,
So
yum.
thank you. uh, uh, ooh, there we go. Thank you so much.
Now, how would
Um,
you say your relationship to gender has evolved over time?
it has definitely been a very intense journey. Obviously, I feel like, I mean, I definitely went through a period of being kind of closeted. And it took me kind of throughout high school to start accepting that I wasn't really meeting the gender marks or sexuality marks. Like nothing
Mm,
was really adding up. I was kind of not doing what my friends were doing. And then I met a friend of mine who had come to my mom's daycare, and I also met another friend of mine who was trans. Like I started meeting other trans people basically as I graduated high school, and I was like, that just seems real and right to me, and that feels more like an accurate representation of my own experience than what I had been told I was most of my life. Um, so recently, I think when I turned like 25 or 26, I fully recognized and like started to process the words, and I realized that I was bigender or two spirit, and those were the correct terms for me and my bodily experience. So it only took till I was 25. So,
I mean,
you
that's
know.
still that's still quick by my standards. So.
Okay. I mean, there's never, I also want to be very clear. There's never like a right or a wrong time, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, just to
Yeah. It just like, there's a very common saying that like you don't transition or you don't come out until you're ready. And for some people that's when you're 12, and for some people that's when you're 60. So like there's no right or wrong answer. And speaking as like quote unquote later in life trans person, like I think all of us like mature trans people have some amount of regret, but that's just
yeah.
how it had to be. So like there's no sense in there's no sense in crying over lost days, even though sometimes we really want to.
Yeah, lost gender. No sense in crying over spilled gender, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Perfect. Thank you for asking that.
All right, so why don't we get into our special topic of the day, which is queer storytelling. How did you get started as a storyteller?
Okay. So I guess kind of going back to childhood, I was really desperate for stories about people who looked like me or were like me in any way, or even represented people in my life. And growing up in Maine, there really was not anything like that, particularly like Black or Indigenous stories. I didn't have any books about people like me until I was probably, I guess I was reading like James Baldwin when I was 8 because I was so thirsty for, and The Fire Next Time or like Giovanni's Room is a wild thing to read when you're 8 years old.
Yeah.
But I was reading that because I was so hungry for that representation. And I was kind of searching for it in any way that I could. But I started like writing and drawing my own comics and stories um, that would reflect me and my friends or people around me, probably at around the age of 7 or 8. And I've been doing it ever since. I've been really obsessed with, capturing people like myself, um, people in my environment, um, for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. And then what you just said about like being thirsty for your own kind of representation. I mean, that's anyone part of a marginalized group can relate to that very, very heavily. So it's Because I know personally, like growing up, like weren't a lot of stories about people who looked like me or had a culture like mine, and especially like not having any stories about trans people growing up. And it's like I grew up in the 80s, and
Yeah.
we had some trans representation, but it was real bad.
It was horrible.
It was real bad.
It was
So
terrible. And also like you look for crumbs too when you're that age. Like I don't know.
Mhm.
I was like, if I even saw a crumb or a semblance of like, is that me? Like I would just eat it up. And then I look back at it like now that I'm older and I'm like, damn. Like
yeah,
it was
so
starving. Like it was starving. So
yeah, so it really, I mean, after like not having that representation for so long and then suddenly getting it, it's life-changing. Like
yeah.
it really is. Like it's like, oh, this is what I've been missing out on.
Yeah. And then I find that like my obsession are usually stories that I'm like even just slightly capture, the experience, at least when I was younger.
Meowster, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I DM'd you to ask if I
Yes, I was
know where
nodding
we
my
are
head.
correctly. Oh, I was looking at the wrong screen.
I'm not sure if there's a pause, am I
Transparent
supposed
moment.
to
Yeah,
hear?
yeah. Well, I was like, would you like to?
Okay, I'm getting so sweaty. um,
Well, before I ask the question, BuffCat, do you need a break to do a costume change?
oh,
Would
oh
that be
no.
helpful?
No, I
Okay.
think it's more just the like, uh, but I'll relax in a minute. Don't worry about it.
You're doing a wonderful job. I'm having a good
Okay.
time. I realized that there was like a small detail that was wrong, and then I did a whole OCD over there ADHD thing where I was like, oh, let's go fix it in all the places. And yep, the
For real.
neurospicy did a spice. That's what happened.
Yes.
Anyways, so BuffCat, how does your queerness impact your work?
Um, I think it impacts like every aspect of what I do, whether I'm making paintings or sculptures. Like recently, I've made a sculpture of a fully wall mountable butthole. Um,
Okay.
you know, I'm very proud of it.
You
It
should
took like
be.
um, and like it is so fun seeing people react to it because they squint and they're like, "Is that a butthole?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because everyone has a butthole and everyone can appreciate butthole. So like, I try to depict queerness in my art in every facet that I can. So not that it's all about butthole, but I try to depict our bodies um, and things that matter to us.
Yeah.
I
Oh
guess
my God.
I love it.
yeah, yeah.
Did you
Uh,
sculpt that sculpture that's behind you in the video version of this?
I actually there's a place where I live at the Equality Community Center in Portland called Safe Combinations, which gives like trans affirming clothing to
Oh, okay.
people who transitioned. And I'm very good friends with them, and they gave me this mannequin, and I like painted it. So it's just a plant
Incredible.
stand. But she's beautiful. She's grace. She's everything.
Incredible.
um, but yeah, if you're ever in Portland, they do either give it for free or you can pay what you can there. So um, it's one
Mhm.
of my favorite places.
Yeah.
Um,
You were gonna get along when you started talking about buttholes. So
Thank God, because if this wasn't a podcast that I couldn't talk about whole, like please, please.
yeah, I mean, hey, we all got holes,
Yeah, we
okay?
all do. We all have various holes, and I love that for us.
Yes.
It's great. I make like nipple paintings, and I make like chest paintings, and because you don't know what gender a person's nipples are, like so I have a lot of different pieces, and I've been doing shows like that that kind of depict an overall queer experience and a gender
Mhm.
inclusive experience. Um, and I find the reactions tend to be kind of telling. The audience currently who's viewing that work is at a at one of my favorite gay bars, and I think there's only like 3 in Portland now. But it's called Cocktail Mary. I'm just like plugging them all today, but um I did it there.
That is what you do with holes sometimes.
Yeah.
You
It's the spiciest joke I've made in a while on stream.
That's
You're welcome.
good. That made me blush. My ears are like red. But yeah, so oh wow. The owner of that bar would have loved that joke. I wonder if he'll listen. So shout out to Isaac. But I'm doing more work pertaining to that, like for my paintings and sculptures. But particularly when it comes to like my illustrations and stories I work on. Right now I'm working on something about my like childhood and my life and my experience of being a queer and gender non-conforming person, and like figuring myself out. It's called Letters from Little Brook. So I like to tell stories in that way, and I also love to talk about and paint and draw buttholes. So follow me for a wide variety of content.
Amazing.
Yeah. Gay sex, I draw that. It's fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm just casually sliding the butthole sculpture from your Instagram into the Twitch chat.
I'm looking at this right now. I have to see this right now.
It's so pink.
Can't wait. Can't wait for the break. I have to look at it right now.
I actually hold on, where's the spray?
It's very shiny.
Oh my god, that is the shy halud of buttholes.
Oh my gosh.
And for the girls who don't know, it's the super gloss finish. That's what I used on the
wow.
I finished. It's ceramic. It's a ceramic, fully wall mountable butthole. And I'm working on making silicone molds so I can make a bunch of them. So a hole could be yours if you want.
For 3 easy payments of $49.99, YouTube can own this butthole.
YouTube can own this big giant butthole. Put it on your wall. And honestly, like if you're afraid, like first of all, what are you afraid of? Like what are you afraid of, honestly? But if you are afraid, just like gaslight your guests and be like, it's the bottom of a mushroom tab.
Yeah.
Like, or say it's like
don't be gross. It's not a butthole.
Yeah, like you're just like gaslight. That's my
we here on the Genderful podcast do not encourage gaslighting.
we don't encourage gaslighting
straight people.
It's funny.
Anyway.
It's funny in this context as a joke. It is not funny in reality.
We're not for real, but
we are autistic though, so we have to be clear when we're joking.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Because people will just like keep pulling my leg for a very long time. So.
I did want to pivot back to the storytelling aspect of your art. So what does queerness and storytelling specifically mean to
you? I think it is, I love that question. I think that queerness and storytelling is having queer people in stories and not having it be, I feel like I'm kind of tired of like the coming out storyline for queerness. I think that has a place and it's important, but I really like seeing just stories about queer people. And it's like a facet of their life. You get to see them be queer, but it isn't like the whole point of the story. Like they get to have a story that isn't about that. That's kind of usually my approach when I'm writing stories. And currently I don't have anything published. I'm almost embarrassed or nervous to like put it out, put out the projects I'm working on. But I do have a webcomic that I've been working on for a very long time, for an amount of time I'm almost embarrassed to admit that I've been working on it for. But it's basically about the main character is a trans man. It's called Dimensions Mixtape, and it's about basically this guy who is living in our dimension, and he is trying to survive. It's like 2042. He lives with his sister, and uh, the people who own the land they live on, like he has to work by playing in a band to pay their water tax, like to get water, because it's, you
Oh,
know, really, it's
dystopian.
depressing here. Yeah, a
Mm.
little. We're on our way, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but basically, he meets this character, Carla, who like shows up, and she's like, "Ugh, if you hate your life, like leave it. Let's go. Come with me." And she's basically going like hopping from each dimension to find music to add to her mixtape to keep going to different dimensions. And
Mm.
so he goes with her to like go on these adventures. So, and she's also like gender nonconforming, and there's a lot of different queer characters.
Mm.
But again, like that's just who they are, and they're just experiencing this little wacky, silly adventure in space and time. So that is the concept of like that story. So I hope that answered your question and I didn't go on for too long. But
No, that was
That's a great
great. That
story.
sounds dope. That sounds like a queer version of the 1990s TV show Sliders.
oh my god, I haven't
See,
thought of that in so long. Wow. Okay. Wait, here I was thinking I was so original, but now I'm thinking about that.
Well, because like the premise of the show Sliders is like, they go to like different timelines and different dimensions in every episode.
Yeah.
So like it's just like that, but like queer.
I was honestly, that's the thing is that, so what really inspired me to create that concept and start pursuing this story was basically um, because I was a really big fan of like Doctor Who growing up,
Mm.
and and Star Trek, and different like sci-fi features, and none of them really, really, really featured Black and brown people or Indigenous
mm-hmm.
people in a big
Mhm.
way, and they also didn't include a ton of queerness. Like I think more so than other sci-fi series, Star Trek and Doctor Who kind of do, but I wanted to see something that was like just fully the main characters are these people, and it's about them and it's for them and it's by them. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was the goal with that.
I love that. Yeah, because representation matters, and like
It was
intersectional representation matters.
100%.
So having trans representation, having BIPOC representation, ability, immigration status, all of those different things, like different levels of or different ways of mental neurotypes, right? Not to say that one neurotype is better than another, but instead being like, wow, look at how all these different neurotypes that solve things in different ways actually come together. And
Yeah,
like that's how the solution is found, is through diversity, not through conformity or sameness.
100%. I definitely, I think a lot of the characters that I gravitate towards tend to be a little more neurodivergent, but that's because I am. So
Yeah.
I think when I'm writing my stories or I'm coming up with concepts, that tends to be where I go. And maybe it's because I'm a hack, but maybe it's because I'm really just like deeply desperate for that kind of representation. I want to see
Mhm.
lots of characters with ADHD.
Yay.
Yeah.
Like,
And
can
it's
they
like
not complete a task? I love that. Like,
yeah, and it's like this is very much a cliche, but it's true. Like you write what you know, right? So you want to write your own experiences into your art, right? And you're not the only one that has ADHD, and you're not the only one who's neurospicy. So like you're gonna write those elements of your life into your story, and it's gonna resonate with people who are like you.
yeah, 100%. And I
Mhm.
feel like it's not even something that feels super, it's not that I'm not intentional about it, but it's not really like I'm going to write this kind of character. Like it's just I'm writing what feels familiar to my life and my body and people I know. Like I'm
Mhm.
not really I don't have like a checklist really.
Yeah.
It's whoever comes to mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that kind of like reminds me of something else we were talking about earlier of, kind of like trans and queer people existing in stories, but like we only get like the coming out story, or even worse is we get the bury your gays trope. And I I think this is because these are characters written by cisgender cishet people for cishet people.
Mhm.
And when we start getting stories written by queer people for queer people, that's where you start to see like a lot more authentic portrayals and more like, just queer people existing and living their lives and not, serving to advance the plot. They're not like,
Yeah.
there to further the plot of a cisgender person. So um, I've had the
Or just
privilege
like the
of watching a bunch of
catchphrase.
queer art made by queer people, and it's so much better. Oh my God, it's so much better.
Isn't it nice? Isn't it nice when we don't have to have crumbs? Like I just
Yes.
I feel like and thank God for the internet because like I've had access to things where I'm like, delicious. Like we love that. Yeah. I definitely I think um the bury your gaze trope. I feel like that literally just like brought things up for me. I hate it so much. And
Yeah.
I also don't like the like tragic gaze or the like, I don't is it so much to ask that I just want like a nice, wholesome, like I want them to have a good time,
Yeah.
Not all of the time, because that's not real. But I'd like them to have like a slightly nice time sometimes. I think that's
Hmm.
also a goal of mine is to avoid the leaning and I don't know, just let them be gay, let them be together, let them be
Hmm.
trans. It really bothers me.
Yeah, it's like we're allowed to have happily ever after stories too. It's it's not just the
God
normies.
forbid. I know. um, yeah.
Yeah. I I think that it's really powerful when like people, non-cishet people, are written by non-cishet people. Like,
Yeah.
because I can tell when I'm watching a piece of media that the writer or creator is queer, neurospicy, trans, something, right? Like one of those, not all of the powerful identities person, like powerful in
Mm,
the eyes of the patriarchy and, in the eyes of colonialism and all of that. Um, because there are little details that, as especially like a neurospicy person, that I pick up on that I don't even
mm,
think neurotypicals would notice or recognize as like, oh, that character is being autistic right now or whatever. Um,
yeah.
but there's just little things that I'm like, oh, that character is stimming to self-soothe. And it's so powerful to, instead of see like a traumatized autistic person, see an autistic person self-soothing and like taking care of themselves in the context of whatever the adventure is that everyone is having, in the story. And so like seeing, because, in stories about autistics, it's often, oh, it's a high support needs person and there are all these
Mm,
specific ways. And it's like, no, like there's a lot of ways that like the way that things are framed or edited or like presented can like upplay or downplay the like the neurotypical discomfort and the awkwardness
mm.
that neurotypicals perceive in neurodivergent folks, because it's like I'm not awkward to other neurodivergent people. Like
I like don't I mean all my
I
friends
am.
are neurospicy and I'm like, oh thank God, like I can unmask
Hmm.
around somebody or like isn't it nice that I can just stim here, I think I really am fast. Sorry, did I interrupt you or anything? Or is that
No, you're good.
okay? We're just
No,
talking.
you're
This
fine.
is great.
If you did interrupt
Um,
me, then I already forgot because ADHD and I have no lingering negative feelings about it.
oh my gosh, isn't it? It's a superpower. It really is.
It
But
is.
I love watching a story and thinking like that person is like, I feel seen by them, and like that
Mhm.
person seems neurodivergent. Like I have ADHD, and I always felt. I mean, it's taken me like lots of therapy to kind of process through that kind of like suppression because I mean I don't know if you've had this experience, but it's very much like stimming. I've been allowing myself to unmask and stim like within the last year, because I wasn't really allowed to do that. And I think, I think that there are probably lots of reasons for that, like racism and sexism. Like there's tons of reasons that also compounded that, like ableism and internalized ableism in me. But I love watching a story or reading a story and being like, wow, he has ADHD. Like I really feel that coming through here. It's really shining through.
Yeah.
And I think before the stream started, we were talking about Neil Gaiman, I think, or we mentioned him.
Yeah.
And I'm curious
Yeah.
I'm curious about your thoughts, because I think it's not for me to determine Neil Gaiman's sexuality in any way. But when I was watching the show and when I read the book when I was like in third grade, I was like, me? Like, hi girl. Like, it was very like, and so I'm curious to hear your opinion, because I'm just like, if straight people don't do these roles, like David Tennant will never get a job again. You know what I mean? So I'm curious about like, are there straights who do it well? Like I'd love to talk about that. That's really cool to me. I mean, or do you
Yeah,
just
so
not?
I'm personally I'm like not familiar enough with Neil Gaiman's work to really have an informed opinion. Like probably the extent that of exposure that I've had is I think I watched the first season of American Gods, and I didn't want to watch any more of it because I was like I was confused about what was going on, and I never read the book, and I was like, what is happening? This show is so well made, it's so well acted, but I have no idea what's going on.
Oh my god. I feel like his work is so fruity. Like what was it? The Sandman series. I just watched it and I was just like, Satan is this like non-binary like hottie. Like, who plays Brienne from Game of Thrones? I feel like such a bad
Oh,
name.
Gwendolyn Christie.
Yeah, so Satan is played by Gwendolyn Christie, and I think Satan uses like, I can't tell if it was they, them, or he, him. I can't remember. I watched it like in December in like fever dream, but it was interesting. It was good, but I'm just saying, I'm like, he puts these characters into his stories where I'm like, hello, like, and and maybe this is just like a part of his life, and he's just writing what he knows, and he knows a lot of queer people. So I'm just, maybe we don't have to talk about my
Yeah.
hyperfixation right now, but I just, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about like.
Yeah, so I mean, there is something that like so I have again like this is like secondhand knowledge that I have. I have not read the book. So in the book of Sandman, there is a trans woman character in it, and the book was written, I think it's something like in the 80s or something, or,
It's the
or it
80s.
was written a long time ago.
I'm holding my
And
breath because I'm like, I can't believe
yeah,
you're talking.
and it was progressive for its time for having that kind of character in it, but sensitivities have shifted since then, and like something like that today is kind of like not great. But
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman has come out and said it's like, oh, if I was writing this now, I would write it completely differently. So like
Mm-hmm.
he himself has kind of evolved with the times. So again, I haven't seen the show, but I would expect the show to address that character very differently than it was addressed in the book. But take everything I say with a grain of salt, because this is all stuff that I've heard from other people, and I haven't read it, I haven't watched the show, so
The show feels definitely from. I mean,
yeah.
I haven't read it since I was very young. So, and you know how things like, I mean, it was like what, like 2007, I think, and the things that passed over my head at that time were vast. Like I started rewatching America's Next Top Model, and I was in hell. It was unbelievable. I can't believe that show existed. And I watched it. I just consumed it, That was bizarre. Um, but yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. You mentioned Star Trek, or like you made a reference earlier.
Oh yeah.
And I loved it.
Yes.
So I'm just like, and that and I feel like they represent there's representation in that show, and I think that things can exist that I may have clung to like as my breadcrumbs, that maybe are not as slay as I remember. And I guess I wanted to talk about that.
Well, I think something to keep in mind is the cultural context when those pieces of media were created, which is also important when reading the Bible. As a side note, you need to keep the cultural context in mind.
Yeah.
As a person with 2 degrees in religion who is now a pagan, I have extreme opinions about the importance of cultural context and how it's taken out of context so much. Okay, that's not this podcast though. Anyways, I think that I think I have random things to pepper in. So one, my wife, who is a trans woman, actually got to see Neil Gaiman and Amanda Palmer many years ago. I think Neil was one of the, like, whatever the name is for when you're like the winner of the parade or the grand ringleader or something. Yeah, the Grand Marshal. Neil Gaiman was like the Grand Marshal of the Mermaid Parade with Amanda Palmer. And that was around the time when they were either dating or married. I think they are now not married. But they were together for a chunk of time. And I have listened to the audiobook of Amanda's The Art of Asking, and Amanda's life is queer AF. Like, oh my God, so queer. And so, like, whether or not Neil himself is queer, who knows? But like, he has lived a life where he has been surrounded by and just drenched in like queer art and queer music, and like, he's not oblivious to that realm of being.
I think his favorite drag queen is Katya. I found out. Like, he's ally, like, I'm guessing. So.
Yeah.
I don't know him. It's very parasocial, but I'm just like, I love to see when people depict real life because we're everywhere, So
yeah,
I feel like to have only straight, like, heteronormative media is like not, you're telling a story that isn't based in reality, like in any way. And I think that's what gets me. So
yeah.
I will add that Good Omens, which is another show based on Neil's writing, especially season 2, has some very strong, like, gay man romance vibes. It's great. I won't say any more than that because I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it yet.
They
but
are like
non-binary.
It's very good.
They're
non-binary characters too. They don't
queer.
They switch genders
queer vibes.
a lot.
They do because they're angels. And so there's this whole thing going on with like gender is just not even a thing when the characters are angels because angels don't have gender.
Yeah,
who knows?
it's generally it's a queer relationship, I think.
Very queer. Very queer.
Love them.
Yeah, it's so great. I feel like there's another third thing I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it now. It's okay.
A secret third thing. Okay.
Yes, a secret third thing. I love Star Trek. I'm just gonna say that.
Oh yeah, we could turn this into a Star Trek podcast.
Discovery has a lot more representation in it as a Star Trek show, which is true. I agree with you.
Yes, that's
also they use mycelium to travel the stars, which I think is cool as heck.
Okay, I've been like desperately.
You haven't seen Discovery? Put it on your watch list. It's very good.
I definitely will. I used to watch it with my grandpa, and if anyone ever wanted to blackmail me and like go on the Wayback Machine, they could probably find my like Kirk and Spock fan fiction that I'd write. So,
nice.
Go for it. Go have fun.
I mean, there's a very long history of Kirk and Spock fan fiction.
I'm not new.
To the 60s.
I'm not original.
It's fine. It's fine.
I was right.
Says we stand fanfic authors.
That is absolutely fine.
I'm still like, I'm now being like, I love that for you, for my younger self. Like, you really were writing about gay sex at like 17. I love that for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Great note to end that.
Well, and for me at least, I feel like part of part of why fan fiction can be so powerful is we are writing the queerness into the stories. Like we're taking those breadcrumbs and we're expanding on it and making an entire casserole out of it, right? Like it's like, oh yes, you gave me one scene over here, a little tiny bit. Now I'm gonna run with it. The thing I was gonna say, I have more than once I have seen a queer storyteller create their characters and they get like hamstrung by the bigger Hollywood decision making people and the networks and the network execs. And so like, you know, you have I feel like Owl House got canceled sooner than planned. I feel like there's another show. But a couple of those shows with really strong queer representation, I feel like they almost always end up putting like the gay kiss, quote unquote, as like the last episode of the last thing at the very end. And so then you don't get to see the queer relationship develop. It's like if we put it on the very final thing, then the author gets to proclaim what their intention was all along. But then, like, you know, if it totally tanks in network ratings or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the finale of the whole thing, anyways.
Yeah.
It's over now.
And it makes it way easier to cut for international markets.
It does. And it's been happening since at least the 90s, if not the whole time. Like, you know,
the cousins
Xena and Gabrielle. I don't know who saw that back in the day. There is a lesbian show. The very last episode.
I did, and it changed my brain chemistry forever for the rest of my life. So.
Yeah. Yep. I was so mad when they're like, let's put a whole Aries romance story arc in here. I'm like, no, that
they raised a baby together and they combined like, their names.
Weirdness. So weird.
These sapphic women raised a child together. Yes. And I literally like I felt like I could pull out my hair. I mean, it's like people saying Bert and Ernie like aren't married. Like I know it's Sesame Street, big difference between Xena Warrior Princess and Sesame Street, but I'm saying like these are the like honestly these are the stories growing up that I was just like, are you serious? Are they really saying this isn't what it is? Like, you know, I don't even need it to necessarily be said out loud. I don't think, but it would be nice. It would be nice. Just say it. I get very passionate. Xena used to, again, Xena changed my brain chemistry, I think. And she was hot. That's one of the first girl crushes either.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Lucy Lawless is she's gorgeous.
Oh my god. I was like
I never really watched Xena, but like yeah, Lucy Lawless, she fine.
More like Lucy Flawless.
So hot. I tried rewatching that a few years ago with a friend, and like we were halfway through it, and then they like took it off of every streaming platform. I tried finding the box set. I'm committed. If anyone wants to tell me how to find this, please.
Well, I may have some less than legal means. But
yeah, well, I love that.
You're in Canada. It's legal there.
Yeah,
I don't know if
it's Canada. We don't have laws here. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah. I don't live my life to be a cop. Like, you know. Anyway.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up this segment with a meme that I read today or this week. So there's a little bit of news in the gaming world where is it Ubisoft or one of the big gaming companies is saying like folks gamers need to get comfortable with not owning their games, and which is just the shittiest hot take ever. And so the response that someone did in a meme is if you don't own games, then stealing them isn't theft. Like if you can't own games, stealing them isn't theft. Woo! Like this works both ways.
I'm not sure that's logically sound, but I don't disagree.
You know?
Yeah. So that. Too long didn't read. Buy hard copies of your media. Yes, if purchase isn't ownership, then piracy isn't theft. Thank you, Juice. That is what it said on the meme.
All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're just tuning in, we are here with BuffCat, she pronouns, and we're talking about queer storytelling. So this is kind of a segue from our pre-break conversation, but what kind of queer stories do you think are underrepresented in today's media?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think that like non strictly binary trans experiences are needed. I think it would be very nice to see more people who aren't just like, you know, maybe they're not, maybe they use he pronouns and they're not medically transitioned, or maybe they're doing things like it would just be nice to see a more diverse uh, amount of transness. I feel like, recently, I don't know if anyone here watches Doctor Who, but I watched the special, and Donna's daughter is a trans woman, and we love to see it. Um,
Mm.
but you know, again, she's like super binary, and I would love to see less binary representation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
So
less.
on
I
that,
agree. That's something that's um, we're doing better with representation, but we're still kind of stuck in our binary modes of thinking.
Yeah,
And I'm saying this like as a binary trans woman, and um, I know that my experience is not the only one. Like some of my best friends are non-binary. Like some of the people in this call are non-binary. Like it's um, you know, I I wish there was kind of more representation of the diversity of human experiences out there, because right now we're only getting a small sliver of it.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to see like more two-spirit representation, or like
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
like what is that like third gender concepts,
Yeah.
culturally, like cultural based gender representation would be
yeah,
really cool. Um, but yeah, Master, did you have a thought?
yes. So on the specific thing that you mentioned about the Doctor Who special that came out around winter 2023, for those listening in the future and don't know the date context of when we're
There
speaking,
are a lot of those specials.
yeah, there are many of them. The There were a lot of TERFs in the UK that wrote to the network and said like, oh, we didn't like that there was a trans person. And so then there was a trans person on Twitter or some social media. It's called X now, but Twitter is the only thing I will dead
We
name.
all call it Twitter.
We don't acknowledge that foolishness. We don't. We don't
I
need to.
refuse to call it X. It will always be
It's so
Twitter.
Yeah,
cute.
Elon is not a great person. That's putting it very lightly. Not the topic. So so there was a trans person on socials who said, hey, I like people are complaining about this. I want to complain about how there's not enough trans representation. Here's my letter. Here's where to send it in. Here's how to do it. So I actually did. I wrote to BBC and said, hey,
Hey,
you need more trans people. How about non-binary? How about these other things? And I think I got a letter back.
Oh.
they have to
Because
respond. They do, which is
yeah,
very fun.
yeah. And so it's like I just love it. What I don't remember is if anyone did like a after the fact, like, okay, they got, 100 people that said boo trans and then 10,000 people that said more trans. Like, I don't know if there's any sort of data on that. I would love to know. Um, yes, juice out here with the banger ad quotes. um,
um,
anyway,
yeah,
but yeah,
I think
it's
that
what do you think about cute Shudi Gatwa being the new doctor? A black
I was
queer
actually
man
really
being the
excited.
doctor. Yeah.
I was pumped. And I think the show I kind of fell off interest with it. And so when I saw that he was gonna be the doctor, I was like, oh my God, like this would have been such a deep thing for my childhood. Especially because like I felt so I was watching it just for context, back in like 2005, 6, 7.
Mm,
And so like Martha was a character.
mm-hmm.
And like I was starved for all kinds of representation. But I do
Yeah.
think I think Tennant's era was super queer in an understated way, as much as you could be in like 2007.
Yeah.
um and I I loved that, but I do think that the way Doctor Who has handled their Black characters has not been my favorite.
Mm.
And I think that like they did Martha so dirty. They did her so dirty. I could rant about that forever, to be completely honest. We don't have time for how much I want to say about it, but I
Mhm.
think he's like, just seeing him act is like he's phenomenal. Like he's so good at his
Mhm.
job. So I'm pumped. I'm glad that they're trying it. I definitely, while I was watching the special, there were some things that made me cringe like a little bit. I think Donna said something that made, did you feel this too? I like, it made me want to crawl inside my skin and just burn up, you know? Did you feel that?
I
Or
don't remember the
was like,
thing that Donna said. I did have feelings about a narrative choice that they made that they've never made before with regards to
oh, the,
regeneration.
are we allowed to talk about that? Or is it a
I don't
spoiler?
know. It's kind of spoilery, but I'm like, girl, feelings.
I thought it was like
It
all
just,
over the internet.
yeah. I also feel
But
that
like,
way. So I don't know.
I kind of, I have very mixed feelings about it because
Same.
I think I was like,
I think it was a
I was
playing it
shocked.
safe measure.
Oh, hugely, hugely.
Yeah.
Like not letting this character go the way that it normally goes was definitely challenging. But I think when I was watching it, I was just like having fun. They played the Spice Girls, like I was just like enjoying it. So I was like, you know, David Tennant being kooky and like there's like the Spice Girls playing. I'm having the time of my
Mm.
life. And the Doctor is Black now, like I was living. So um, I just took it for what it was. Is my point. But I'm hoping that like going forward though, it's. I hope they handle the racial aspect well. I think a lot of a lot of what I really struggled with like Martha's character, for example, was that they would be in situations like going back in time, and Martha would be very clearly experiencing racism, and the Doctor like
Yeah.
didn't really go like, "You're experiencing racism. That's bad." Like it wasn't really super acknowledged. And I remember watching it when I was young, and I'm like there, I can't remember which episode it was, but Martha was a maid, I think, or made
Yeah.
to just be a maid. Like they just assumed
Yeah.
she was a servant. And so she just had to be a servant. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's crusty. So I'm hoping going forward, like how are they gonna deal with that with his character if they go back in time? Because the
Yeah.
Doctor isn't usually in that position.
Right.
So I want to know if they're just gonna gloss over it and pretend it's not a factor for
Yeah.
him.
Or like only
Um,
go to like other planets instead of like Earth
oh, and
history
avoid.
or
Oh
something.
my God.
Wouldn't that be
I don't
terrible if
know.
they just avoided it for a whole season? I feel like they tend to do every other, like one like world history, one travel off, go do a thing. Sometimes it'll be two and then two or something, but
Yeah.
typically it's kind of a mix of both.
I mean, with wow, I'm sorry. It's like late and my brain is just fully rotted at this point, and I'm like
It's okay.
the writer of help me, please. I can't believe this. This is like one of my favorite shows, and my brain is
There's been a
rotten.
lot of writers on Doctor Who.
For
There's
Tennant, and
Moffat.
before Moffat was there.
All I
I
got
didn't
is
realize.
Steve. I don't know if Steve or Stevenson or I'm I am not the name person. I can't remember the names of
Um,
actors either. I'm not. It's not my strength.
I
I
Any
hate
I
any
myself
other
I
for
haven't
that.
strengths.
watched Doctor Who, so I don't know anything about it. And so because normally I'm like boom, boom, boom with like actors and directors, but like with
Russell
this,
T
I'm just like,
Davies. Russell T Davies. It was
I'm
Russell
waiting.
T Davies.
There you go,
I'm sure
Russell
the
T
chat
Davies.
team.
I was waiting for the mods to save us with some quick googling.
No, it was. It would come out, but I just had to be weird about it. Yeah. So I think I trust him. I think he's got it. He writes really awesome queer stories and like um, non-queer stories, and I'm just I am nervous about the racial aspect a little bit, but that's only
Yeah.
because of Martha. So
Did you see any of the Woman Doctor episodes?
She starts her answer with a sigh.
Yes.
Listen, I mean, I did. I think, to be clear, like she was great. I thought she was phenomenal. Like she was, as an actress, great. I hated the writing. It was so,
Mm,
there was no, like there were, it just felt like there were no stakes a lot of the time, no real stakes. There was no, it just, I don't, and I'm sure maybe I hope I'm not like starting a war or people hate this, but I don't like how safe they played it. Like it was the first female doctor and they could have really, played into that.
yeah.
Inherently I find that to be like very trans. Like the doctor transitioned and is now a
Yeah.
woman. And how cool is that? How, because the
Yeah.
doctor doesn't really have a gender or a
Right.
set race. And that's interesting. Like they could have really played into that. And I feel like they did, but it felt surface level.
Yeah.
Anyway, how did you feel about that? Did you were you
So
like,
I
also Miranda, I'm sorry if
think
you feel like left out
Oh,
of
that's
this.
fine.
Oh,
You two
okay.
go on ahead.
Brendan's like,
He's like, go
I'll
shit,
just catch my
girl, go
breath back
shit.
here in Star Trek
Yeah.
land. You go ahead with the doctor. Thank you, Miranda. I felt like with the writing that they did, and honestly, I can't even remember the lady doctor's name because I'm bad at names.
Oh, Jodie something, I think.
Jodie, not Foster, that's not it.
Jodie Whittaker.
Whittaker.
Oh my God, if
Yes.
Jodie
See,
Foster
Miranda
was the
knew. Good
doctor,
job.
See,
You
I know
participated.
I would
actors. I just don't know anything about the show.
So I felt like
it is Jodie Whittaker.
I felt like Jodie Whittaker, like she was in a really hard place because the Doctor Who team was trying something new for them, and it was lockdowns. We're still in a pandemic, but it was during lockdowns, and so like that made everything more complicated and perhaps less episodes or overall seasons happen because of that. I loved that there were 3 companions and they really explored like some of those pieces and what does it mean to not just have one person and one extra bonus person? Like what does it mean to have a more, like, I mean, the Doctor is pretty ace spectrum, so any partnerships that the Doctor has tends to be ace. But I liked that there were a number of generations and races like within the team of companions that was around. I thought it was powerful and interesting to have like very slight lesbian subtext. I'm angry they didn't explore it more. A lot.
That's how I felt. Thank you.
Yes.
I was
So I
afraid to
feel
go
like
there.
in a lot of ways they started to touch directly on topics that I haven't seen Doctor Who directly call out. And I think like the writers I think were different than usual. And they had like maybe writers from the cultural background that they were discussing actually doing the writing, which is very important. Like, and I wish I remembered the specific episodes better to give specific examples. I don't right now, but I just remember the general thoughts I had at the time. And I agree with you. There are plenty of ways they could have taken all of those things farther. And I have some, when I saw that they're like, oh, we're going to go back to Tennant and Donna for the specials, I was like, so we had like all this diversity and all this like multiculturalism, and now you're just like, let's go back to everyone's 2 favorite white people. Like, God damn it. Like, what are you doing? You're going backwards. Let's switch because we're on the show again. Back to the one everybody loved the most. Like, what are you doing?
And I'm like, I'm guilty for loving that too, like, which is, I know that that's not, hear me out. I loved all of the things that you just mentioned, right? Like I do want to plus that. I think again, I wish they went more in depth with those topics. I'm glad they touched them, but I think my issue with that was the lack of, you know, going in on it. And I don't know if that was Chris Chibnall. I think that was the writer.
I guess
Honestly, it's better than
again.
Moffat. I started rewatching it, and Stephen Moffat is like, it's just like so horny. It's like needlessly horny, and it's interesting because I can tell like Matt Smith is playing this character like he's Ace because the doctor like is Ace, like, you know, but he's just like, it's so horny, and the gaze is so horny for like, and it really, it wasn't a way that I didn't notice in like 2011, but watching it, there's nothing wrong with a horny story, but
yeah,
it just feels a little out of place with this character who's, you know, it was just off to me. So
I do think that this being produced in the UK is a big part of what's happening culturally. And like, if you look at politics on Turf Island,
it is
you
so
can see
gross.
how like, you know, some of these things might have come to be. So, I mean, we're circling back to, once again, the importance of knowing the cultural context of the media and how things came to be, because my impression is that people wanted to go harder or deeper on some of the like justice topics, and
Right.
were really hamstrung by the bell curve of what most people will find palatable,
It is
or
produced by the
the
BBC
perception
as
of what
well.
most people would find palatable. So yeah.
They I went through that process with like receiving or like giving feedback to the BBC because they posted this like article. I can't remember what it was about, but I mean, I can't remember the deep specifics because this is like almost 2 years ago, I think. But it was like posting or talking about, I think it was about trans rights and trans women in bathrooms. And it was, the way it was written was disgusting. And so a bunch of people online were like, respond. And it went through like, I think a 6-part process, and they still did not take it down. So I do understand the context over there is atrocious, and
Yeah.
so I definitely think that should inform my opinion a little more. Yeah.
Juliet and Maddie, who are big Whovians, is that the name of the fandom? Who heads? I don't know.
Yeah, Hoovians.
Juliet and Maddie said we did that too. It was fucked. So you're getting some
Right. So you know the
camaraderie from the
article.
chat. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was like, it was making me pull my hair out. I was very upset. But yeah. Thank you for talking about one of my special interests with me for so long.
You are welcome. I also like
that's
Doctor
kind of
Who.
the point of the podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually made a note that we need to tell our guests before the show that we're allowed to info dump. That's part of the point. So then they know, because I keep forgetting to tell them.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe they're like
So
doing this
yes.
while they wash dishes or something. That's what I do when I listen to a podcast. So
Yeah, it's like, you know, who doesn't want to listen to a bunch of like queer trans people info dump about random stuff? Anyways, support us on Patreon, friends, if you want more queer info dumps. There's the sales pitch. 30 minutes of Doctor Who, 1 sentence about Patreon.
That's a good ratio, right?
I think so. I think so.
So funny. Okay. I'm gonna attempt to get us back on topic, and then I'm gonna mute my microphone so you and Miranda can talk some more. I don't take over the podcast.
Okay, my brain is just booting back up now. So
loading.
It's
I'm
like,
seeing the
you know,
little
when you walk
spinning
away from
symbol
your
on your
computer and
forehead.
it like shuts off, and then you come back to it and it takes forever for like, I'm just like,
We have very cute loading emojis in the chat. Thank you, Alatita. You're helping.
Cute.
#helping. So cute. Okay, so BuffCat, if you could tell us a bit about your experience with being bigender or two-spirit as a Black Indigenous artist. Just a light topic.
Just to like follow up that little talk about Doctor Who, let's talk about
Yeah.
your childhood drama. Great. So I hmm, can you ask the question again so I can actually answer
Yes.
it like
I also
correctly?
posted it in the Zoom chat if you'd like to read along. Tell us about your experience with being bi gender or two spirit as a Black Indigenous artist.
Um, so I live in Portland, and it's overall pretty positive. I noticed that people don't really use my he, him pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told repeatedly that I'm not very much giving he, him. So it's kind of just, it's kind of navigating that again, like back with the binary aspect. I'm not in a position where I can do anything really financially, like with my transition in any way. And you can interrupt me if this is triggering or upsetting. I'm still kind of navigating it myself. Um,
Yeah.
but I have days that are easier than others when it comes to um, like being perceived. A lot of the time I don't really show what I look like on my art page. Like no one really. I'm doing it more now because I'm trying to um, put myself out there more, and make sure that people know that you can make art and express yourself and do things as well. And it's okay to put yourself out there. Uh, but um, I think um, as long as you find people who you can express yourself with, like it makes it a lot easier. I have a lot of
Yeah.
other Indigenous and Black artists who I work with, and who also have like just completely helped guide and put me into it, yeah, bring me to the place that I'm at now. Shout out to my friend Maya. They're trans. Um, there's so many people who've built me up, um, and given me opportunities, and they are all overwhelmingly so Black, Indigenous, and queer or trans. So I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without them. Just to end that on a more positive.
Mhm.
Did that
No,
answer the question?
yeah, no, you definitely did.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, because it's no one is just like one thing, right? So we're all an intersection of various different identities, and I think there's um a lot we could be doing a lot better promoting the stories of folks who are Black, Indigenous, bi gender, two spirit. I mean, two spirit is one that like not a lot of folks know about. I mean, that's one. So like whenever I use like the full acronym, like when I go, 2S LGBTQIA plus, I get
Yeah.
questions from my cishet friends, like, what is 2S?
Yeah.
So I have to explain what it is. And even myself as a queer person, like I first learned about that, like, maybe 5-6 years ago. So I think that's having like platforms like this and other platforms where folks can learn more about that sort of thing. And this is the sort of thing I was talking about earlier, where a lot of our media kind of just focuses on this narrow sliver of the expression of humanity, and there's just so much more out there.
Yeah.
But getting into the reasons for that, what does gender mean in a decolonialization context?
Um, for me, I think that the oppressor, in this case, colonizers or colonial influence, is to tell people who they need to be and who they are. Um, and I think that the most anti-colonial act that you can do is unapologetically express yourself, whether that's through your sexuality or your gender, or unapologetically existing in your body. And so um, when it comes to my art, like, you know, shamelessly making a giant butthole if I want, like, because I want to. And and not just because I want to, but because it is I had a train of thought where this would have been great. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that, I think art is one of the best tools to combat colonial oppression. And I also think that just unapologetically embracing who you are, and that can change over time too. Like my gender expression has changed, and who I am has changed, and even how I make art has changed. Um, that is an anti-colonial act. So, yes.
No, I love that for you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I do think you're right. I mean, expressing ourselves, our true selves, whether, it be through our gender identity or through our sexuality or just through making art that makes people uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I think that's an excellent way to fight back against colonization, because part of colonialism is getting people to fit into these narrow buckets
Mhm.
that people in power would prefer us to be in. So
Well, it's easier to exploit that way, They don't want
exactly,
you to be yourself because it's not exploit, you're not a viable victim, babe. So I think as soon as
exactly.
you stop being a viable victim, like
Mhm.
obviously it can be challenging, but it's worth it. I love being me. It's honestly great. So
That's fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
that's honestly, that is the best revenge against the homophobes and
Right.
the transphobes and the queerphobes, is just living your best life and being happy.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's and I also think like just like experiencing euphoria and being
Hmm.
yourself is like my favorite part of that. Like not only are you just not an exploitable tool under capitalism, but you know, you get to like just thrive and really enjoy yourself. Like, oh, I feel like I glowed up like 12 times, once I
Aw,
started. I just get gayer and more trans every year, and I'm really
love
happy
to
about
see
it.
it.
So that's like
Well,
if you want to pull anything away from this podcast, you can always get gayer. There's never
Oh
an
yeah,
end.
yes.
100%.
Yeah, I'll be like in my
So
final form when I'm 90, I think.
I love it. I have a channel point redemption that I don't know if it's turned on right now. It is possibly turned off, but I originally wanted to call it "Make It Gayer," so then it's just like every time they redeem it, the stream gets that much more gay. But Twitch did not like me putting the word "gay" in a channel point redemption title, so I had to rename it "More
Ooh.
Rainbow."
Mm.
But my original, some channel lore for folks. My original name for the "More Rainbow" command was "Make It Gayer." I even
Is it
tried
like a
putting an at
button you
symbol in the
press?
middle of gay.
Would
So
it be like
what happens
grandma?
when people do the "More Rainbow," aka "Make It Gayer" command, I add an article of clothing to my person that it has rainbow on it. So it's just more and more rainbow um, as it goes. And I think people have forgotten about this channel point command because it hasn't been run in a long time. And now I bet everyone's in there like, it's turned off. I can't do it. Like, everyone's listening to me talk about it and they want to spam it. So every 20 minutes, there's a 20-minute timeout. So then you have to stick around and lurk on it. And then you can do it again 20 minutes later. But I recently I had to downsize the quantity of plushies and gay things on my desk so I had room for my books because I'm disabled and I don't want to have to get up and walk to my bookshelf to read my books, which was just not reading my books because I was like, well, I'm not getting gifts. I guess I'm not going to read. I'll just look at my
That
gay
is a
ribbons some more. So I had to condense. But I do have a couple of my little gay things. My favorite one, because it is the easiest sensory wise, not because it is the best of the items, is this one. It was
oh.
knit for me.
Did you make
It was knit for me by a queer person when I was in seminary. This was one of my graduation presents from my advisor, who
Aw.
um, my impression was that he was and maybe still is, a queer man who works in the church. And so, yeah. Anyways, it was a lovely gift. He actually sat there and made them during the entire year-long like advisory thing with our little group of 5 or 6 people in our little mini group. And so at the end, I didn't know they were gifts for us. So at the end, he was just like, "Here you go." I was like, "Oh, it's really cute."
Aw.
That's
So like
beautiful.
not everyone who graduated got one of these. It was just our little affinity group that this was a gift that the advisor made for each of us over the length of that. It's kind of like all of our stories and our processing and learning was woven into the string itself. So it's really meaningful to me to have this little thing that I get to wear.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. I
Yay.
hope you make the
Yay.
make gayer button possible. Not to be, you just explained it to
Yes,
me. I think it's
I
just hard for
did.
me to not visualize it. I
No,
like,
it's okay.
but I
I'll
did
turn it
like, I was
on.
laughing a lot because I was like, how I would love to see you just like piling on more and more and more stuff.
It's
Like it
very
would be
silly. I have like a glittery, sparkly mask thing. I'll go dig it out. And various pride flags that when I'm wearing my a different set of headphones, I can kind of tuck them into the over ear headphones. I'm wearing my little in ear headphones today, so I don't have anywhere to tuck them. I do have an entire bin of rainbow things. It's one of these bins. The other one is a gym pile of random crap. Let's see which one I pull out. Here we go. I have my sparkly mask situation, which is
gorgeous.
very
Are you gonna wear this
sparkly.
for the rest of the time? I hope you do.
I can't wear my glasses with that at the same time. I have this one, which was gifted to me by a friend who watches streams sometimes, which is
Oh,
also nice.
cute.
But it pinches my head and I start to get a headache if I wear it for too long. Um,
Is
and
it like
then I
a
have
gay bear, or is it? Are they bear
it's
ears,
yeah, they're kind of little bear ears. They're little
or
rainbows.
are they
They're
just like
they're they're
rainbow?
just rainbows, but in my
Mm.
mind they're bear ears.
I was
Um,
thinking mouse ears, but bear ears I think work better.
I was gonna say
And there's
that's
this
so
like
cute.
long ribbony thing that I can play with the young cats with. They're sleeping right now. I don't want to get them revved up, but that is another object. And then I have my super cool pass from Nintendo Live, which has a rainbow lanyard. So I can like put that one on.
Ooh.
That one's easier to wear. I can wear that one. Some of the other ones, like I said, they give me headaches and stuff, so I have to figure out anyway.
Oh,
And then I have my rainbow suspenders, which are great.
oh, very
And if I
essential.
don't clip them to anything, I'm also willing to wear those for this episode. But so I actually I used to let people choose the order that I would put them on. But now I decide I get to choose the order I put them on, and it's basically in order of most sensory tolerable.
Well, that makes sense.
Like if it's harder to tolerate sensory
Yeah.
wise, it's going towards the end of the list. I also have a rainbow tie that I love, and part of the back is falling apart,
Ooh,
and maybe it did get stitched. I don't remember. And I have a bow tie that is on a elastic that I put around my neck that is also a little bit too tight, so I don't like to wear it for too long, but it is very cute. And I actually wore this bow tie to my wedding, which was nice.
oh,
Um,
that's sweet.
I have that's a rhinestone that fell off of something. I have a Pride Progress pin. This is not the flag that I designed because it's missing it's not Pride Progress 2.0 and it doesn't have the Gilbert Baker inclusion, which I call my ancestors and descendants pride.
Cute.
That is available as a sticker on my Ko-Fi shop, but this little fella is,
Mm.
it's something.
Beautiful.
It's a little
It
something.
is.
So it's my rainbow things. They're around. I just can't wear them all at the same time because my body says, no. But
Thank you
yes,
for
these are
sharing.
my little treasures. Thanks for coming to my show and tell. Um, something that I was thinking about when you were talking is how sometimes folks will like there's different kinds of pride. So there's like being proud of your gender and sexuality, but then there's also being proud of your ethnic or racial heritage. And so I think
Mm,
about like when folks will reclaim like traditional garb or traditional patterns or like traditional styles of clothing making or traditional dances,
mm.
things that they had before they were colonized and sent to those horrible make you white schools. I'm not remembering the words, sorry.
I,
I've listened to hours and
residential.
hours and hours of yes, I've listened to many podcasts about residential schools, and yeah, the word just fell out of my brain.
Yeah,
Horrible.
that's a whole thing in Canada.
It is
Deep
here
trauma.
too, and Americans
Yeah.
aren't talking about it. Americans aren't talking
I
about it. How we did the
My family
same
does.
BS.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
glad your family does. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
Yeah, I mean,
I will, let me rephrase. White Americans aren't talking about it, and the
Yes.
overculture of the United States doesn't acknowledge it very well or strongly in schools, public schools,
mm,
and it should be talked about. That's actually what I meant.
should we
Thanks for
talk
the
about it?
opportunity
We
to
could talk
rephrase.
about it. I didn't know if that was the vibe, but I'm happy to talk about
Oh,
it.
oh,
Happy to talk about
I'm
my
here for it.
family.
I'm
But
here for it. If you go ahead, you tell us, we'll listen.
Mm-hmm.
um I think I think about this all the time, actually. And I think about like reclamation as an aspect of the fact that I tell stories and that I use art as a vessel to tell stories. Especially because a lot of my ancestors didn't have that. It shouldn't have been a luxury, but so just for background, before um oh God, I don't even know where to start. Let me just like organize in my brain where I need to start
Yeah,
very quick.
it's fine.
um, so just for some context, so my family was from Mississippi, um, and they were the so basically because of what was going on with colonization and the tribes were being kind of like displaced and pushed around. We know about this. So I am Choctaw and Cree. So or Blackfoot, but I'm pretty sure they're under the Algonquin or Cree umbrella. They were desperately trying to maintain their land rights, and under the context of colonialism, the way that they could do that and maintain like tribal sovereignty was through slavery. So they bought my ancestors, my black ancestors, and then owned them. But on paper, it sounds like from my family's stories about this, my great grandmother's mother was Choctaw, and like they were all just a part of the tribe, basically. And so it wasn't really an owner situation. But then when slavery ended and Reconstruction occurred, my family lost their land rights. And I love your cat so much. So cute.
Thank you. This is Cleopatra, my
Oh,
Hi,
youngest and
Cleopatra.
feistiest.
You beautiful baby. Thank you. That helps soften what I'm talking about. um, Cats always
She
know,
saw
you
the
know.
rainbow ribbon and wanted to wanted to play with. Now she's hunting the beef
um,
jerky on my desk.
oh, good. She's smart. But basically, like with Reconstruction, what happened is that they lost their land rights. They were pushed off the land, and a lot of them were murdered. And then my black family, like people who were considered black according to Mississippi, were forced to sharecrop. And then my great grandmother was dealing with that. The white man who owned her land was basically like, you know, saying that she needed to come live with him for reasons that are not PG-13, and so I will not talk about them. But long story short, she like packed up all 8 of her kids, including my grandmother, and like moved them to Maine. So they settled in Portland, Maine. I think it was the 1930s. Um, and so there was the East End, and that is what brought that part of my family here. They were basically fleeing because Jim Crow was getting real. It was really bad.
Yeah.
And so, a huge aspect, though, of my family's culture and history is storytelling and art.
Mm.
All of my cousins are artists. Um, you know, uh, one of my cousins is like a great mural artist here. His name is Ryan. He makes really cool geometric patterns. They're really interesting. And his grandmother is my great grandmother's sister. Um, but long story short is that my art, I think, is something that I inherently had been doing in my childhood. And I was really
Yeah.
excited to hear that art and craft making and basically being a maker is something that my family's been doing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Mm.
And I'm happy to be doing my own iteration of that. Um, now. So I wanted to share that just as some context for my work. Um, yeah. Thank you for listening to that. That was
Oh,
very intense.
I
But
love that. It sounds like engaging with like the art of creation is part of engaging with your ancestors and your lineage, and perhaps would you say that creating art, it's not that the sole purpose is this, but one of the many purposes might be like processing and working through ancestral trauma and to press closer towards liberation?
absolutely, like 100%. You just put that into words in a way that I don't think I could have. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I definitely think that people say that like my Roman Empire is this. Like my Roman Empire is the Industrial Revolution, and the fact that I could just be like thriving and living on the river right now, and I'm not. So I think um, a huge part of processing that, like probably deeply epigenetic trauma, and also like recent lived experiences trauma, because that was very recent. Like I knew my great grandmother. She was
Mm.
my, I mean, I felt like she was my friend. She was a part of my soul. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's like a lot of mourning that goes on for me. And I kind of do, I like to make and tell stories because she could not do that. She was like strongly in survival mode, it felt like. Sorry, it's hard not to get emotional
Oh,
thinking
It's
about
of
it.
okay.
course.
Just
You
because,
are welcome.
Emotions
You're
are welcome
welcome to have
here.
your feelings.
thank you.
And if you feel like it's deeper than you want to go, that's also okay. And I'm comfortable with the subject matter of our conversation, and I'm here for whatever you want to share about this topic.
Yeah, I just like, thank you for saying that. I just think, uh, I think a lot of what I do is trying to, um, I can't remember exactly what, um, I had a cousin be like, well, we don't have the land, but the land is in us, it's in our bodies. And that's why we create, um, and why we are able to be so creative, and why we're fruitful and abundant, because we're like the embodiment of the land. And so even though I'm not on it and I, can't be where I feel I probably should be, it's inside of me and I carry that. So um, I think my work is my way of like manifesting what that means to me, or putting that into physical reality. Um, and I'm saying that as if I don't make like buttholes, but buttholes are indigenous.
I mean,
Who says buttholes are
I
indigenous?
they
Take
are
me
they
seriously.
are well, but the thing is, like, if I look at your Instagram, which is the closest thing to a gallery of yours that I have access to right now,
Yeah, my website is down right now. I'm very sorry.
it's okay.
Um,
It's websites cost money.
I do.
Woo.
Yeah.
And also executive function to maintain.
Very hard.
Like there's this really beautiful image. It almost looks like a tarot card. It says procession and BuffCat, and then there's two people
Mm.
in the woods with some flowers. Can you tell us a little more about that piece of art? Does that have to do with ancestors and the land and those pieces?
It does. So I illustrated a poetry book for someone here, and it's called Poems, etc. But I have that piece, and I made that piece because it was kind of like about mourning home, and like mourning things that you know you carry. So it's kind of like the piece is supposed to represent like a death procession through the woods, and birch trees I think are representative of that, and they're also carrying forget me nots. So it's kind of like uh, me and also a person in my family, and we're kind of going on a procession together. um, that was what that is supposed to represent. So
I love
I
that.
do weave those pieces into my work. Um, Ooh, this is the most in-depth I've gotten. Normally when people are like, what do you make? And I'm like, it's pee pee poo poo art. Ha ha ha. Like, so you're getting a treat. It's like, ha ha.
So
It's like,
I'm laughing a lot because in my bios all over the internet, I always put a line that says, I can't say pee pee poo poo without giggling.
I love being like, haha, stinky, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Fart humor is elite. It's
Yes,
elite.
yes. Top shelf. Only, yes.
Yeah.
Only the highest of brows.
Like, let me just.
It's like, I would rather stick my pinky out while I make my butthole jokes.
so yeah, I mean, I I think the way that I talk about my work is typically not super in depth, but I'm happy that this has been a space where I can say a little more honestly what kind of goes into it. So thank you.
I think about how it can be really scary to be authentic and earnest. Because if someone critiques me when I'm being silly, it's like, oh, I was just kidding. It's like a layer of defense, right? It's like, oh, I can just shrug that off. That wasn't serious, whatever
It's a
that thing is I
joke,
just said.
bro.
Yeah, it's a joke. Don't take it so serious. But
Yeah.
when I make an earnest offering that's like my soul, and then if that
Mm.
gets criticized, then that cuts me deeper than, you know, oh, you're criticizing my silly kitty cat logo. Like, okay, it's just a cat. Like, what do you want from me? You know, like, but if they were to like say something really horrible on my like trans check-in, it's like, oh, I'm like sharing my deep personal thoughts about my physical body and my journey.
Yeah.
And now people are trolling that. Like that, this is not an invitation to the trolls. I do have other people that mod my YouTube for me, so I won't actually see them. You're just wasting your time. But I can see how like perhaps you may even need to establish some rapport or trust or understand if it's okay to be earnest before being able to talk more deeply about your art, because you know it cuts deeper when people criticize real art, quote unquote real, instead of like silly
Yeah.
things.
Instead of my like cats with big butt cheeks and stuff, like, you know, which I do draw. But
yeah, I love the cats with the big butt cheeks.
You know, like to process my childhood trauma and make a book about it, which I am doing. You know, and that's the thing too, is that I think that that's an interesting topic. I'd love to talk more about that, is like the deep vulnerability of basically I've been making like artist journals about kind of like what I'm processing. And for context, I have complex PTSD just from like existing mostly under this, living in this world. Kind of, I feel like I don't know how anyone doesn't develop PTSD nowadays, to be completely honest. Shocked that not everyone has it, but um, so but I'm processing through things like in my childhood, like abuse I experienced from my family, or, you know, racism, or like realizing that I was queer, and like writing about that has been, wow, okay. This is my cat, Princess Mew Mew. Daddy hides when he thinks he's my
Princess Mew Mew.
So cute.
She's kind of tiny.
I
But
love her.
and her foot is stuck. Boo boo, I'm sorry. Okay. So I think I have been really pushing myself last year and this year to kind of just say, okay, if people don't like what I'm saying here, that's fine. And once I started doing that, you're gonna burn yourself on a candle. I need you to please just, can you please go sit? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Play with your rainbow. They're like my
Cat
children.
distractions.
So it's kind of they can be a lot. Anyway, you know, where was my train of thought? What was I even saying? I'm so sorry.
We were talking about vulnerable art versus silly art.
Okay. And just like I realized once I did start posting, um, you know, little bits and pieces from Letters from Little Brook that like so many people connected to what I was writing in a way that like
Mm.
I didn't expect or anticipate in any way. And it's been really
Yeah.
healing, actually. So I'm
Mm.
trying really hard to be more vulnerable with my descriptions of my work, even if it's hard, even if I'm like, you know, I think that cringe or being cringe is like someone bullied you once and then you internalized it, basically.
Yeah.
You know, like even when we were talking about
Mm-hmm.
fan fiction, I think maybe before the show started, and I was just like, oh no, we talked about it on the show. And I
Yes, we
was
did.
talking about like,
Yeah.
I was a little fan fiction writer. I wrote all kinds of fan fiction. And I cringe about it, but recently I'm like, I want to find that again and see where I was at that time in my life.
Hmm.
Like, is it appalling or is it kind of like fierce? Like, do we love it? Do we love it? You know, so I think I'm trying to creatively allow myself space to be cringe, like be cringe. Who cares?
Yeah.
You know, I'm free. So um
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And there's a certain strength in being vulnerable. I mean, it's really easy to be like, oh, whatever, I don't care. But like true vulnerability, that takes real courage. That's a sign of strength.
mm,
And it really endears people to you. I mean, a lot of the people that like I've become friends with or, you know, follow on various platforms, I follow them because of their sincerity or their vulnerability or both. Because
mm,
that's when you know someone's being real. It's they're not like putting on like an act. Like you're not watching some character. Like it's like no. Like if they're talking about, you know, hashtag real talk, um, you know they're
yeah,
being real.
yeah.
So
And that's like, you know, and to be clear, haha, poopy stinky is a part of my real self. It really is. Like
Yeah.
oh
I
yeah,
really,
same,
Yeah.
100%. Like
you know,
I also make haha poopy stinky content. So like
yeah, I feel like who's not a little haha poopy stinky content
yeah, because
type of
it's
guy? Like
funny.
everybody
Like I'm
is,
sorry. Like
yeah.
I'm an old
And here's
woman,
the
but I still laugh at poopy jokes. Like
you know, I do, but I also think that like it has been recent for me to allow myself to not just be like a shit poster, you know. It's been
Literally.
nice. It's been really nice. Yeah, not just to be a shit poster. Like so yeah, so it's nice to be able to talk authentically about my work.
mhm, mhm.
Thank you.
Um, I have a very brief story. I this last week I was doing a mutual aid stream for Violet Mutual Aid, which, by the way, chat, it went really well. We raised over $2,000 in 12 hours. It was amazing. It's a lot of hard work leading up to it. And Rosa did an 8-hour stream, and I only did like a 3 or 4 hour stream. But our efforts combined led to a positive outcome for a trans woman fleeing a domestic violence situation. And
Mm.
there was the full first hour of my stream, everything was scuffed. I couldn't get my game to work. I spent all these hours planning all these incentives and milestones and gimmicks and stuff. And I was just honest with chat. I said, y'all, I don't know what we're gonna do for our content today because I can't get this thing to work. I'm
Mm,
fumbling it at the last little part right at the end.
Mm.
And so I was just honest that I was a little flustered and didn't quite know what to do. And the beauty is, I think it's a combination of I have a habit of just being earnest and upfront with the community about how I'm doing, and we are
mm,
disability forward and neurospicy forward, and like care about mutual aid for mutual aid's sake, not because we get cool presents for doing it. The presents are
yeah.
fun, but it's like that's the bonus. That's not the core of it. And like the community donated hundreds of dollars while I was fumbling getting a program to not work. And I was like not saying words out of my face sometimes for more than a minute at a time, which like feel very insecure as a streamer doing that. Um, yeah, like the community just totally held me. And so there is an audience for earnestness. I think it takes courage to do that, because especially if you have any marginalized identities, like we are told systemically to not be marginalized identities.
Oh yeah.
There's a reason it's called marginalized. We're pushed to the margins. And so
Mhm.
so earnestly claiming and owning those identities is vulnerable just to exist, right? And like the people with identities that are like preferred by colonialism, they don't have to be courageous, quote unquote, just to exist and have opinions and express themselves. Like they can get on a podcast and talk about whatever they want to talk about, and they don't have to worry about, are your identities going to be ripped to shreds in the comments just because you exist visually and verbally and
They're a little too
auditorily as a
comfortable,
person.
to be honest. I feel like they
I
get
agree.
too comfortable. Why
I
do they have
agree.
microphones?
Yes.
Sometimes, not to be a hater.
Big agree. Big agree.
um,
And so like I 100% understand the like inclination to want to couch or soften things in humor, because it is safer. And this isn't a criticism or critique at all. And I guess what I'm trying to convey is there is community and audience for authentic expression.
mm,
And that, and authentic can include silly, right? Because our joy is us saying
Yeah.
to the overculture, I will not only be work, I will not only be a tool of productivity. Like I'm going to make goofy stuff that like just serves capitalism 0%. Like
yeah.
because it
Oh
makes
It's
me
like
yeah.
no
happy.
one will buy
Like
this, and that's
that
fine.
is
Like I love.
also
Being
liberating and
goofy and
good.
silly, that's not an act. Like, I mean, I'll be
No.
sitting by myself in my apartment and making poopy jokes. Like,
Yeah.
so,
It's just it's a yes and. It's a yes
yes,
and. Like
yes. So,
there
like,
is also room for the earnest expression. And I think um you know, there have been days that I've had a really hard time, and on those days I'm not looking for a serious drama. I'm looking for something humorous. I'm like, what comedy can we watch? And
mhm.
so I think there is something beautiful about comedies that also tell truth and tell
Mm,
earnest, honest things, and through the lens of comedy, because it's very easy, I feel, to make a drama and make it just really intense emotionally. It's a lot harder to do a comedy well in a way that is anti-oppressive.
yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's
And
my
so
favorite kind of storytelling. Actually,
same.
is with
Yeah.
humor. It is. It's an art. It's a gift. You know, it's very good. And humor can be like, I don't know. I hate when it's punching down, obviously, but
Oh
like,
yeah.
you know, I could make the joke that every time I touch jeans, they cuff themselves, you know, or like I could talk about all kinds of things, like my 15 different jean jackets or corduroy jackets that look the same, or how I sit funny in a chair, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I'm bisexual, and those are stereotypes
Mm.
um, that I do abide by. So, um,
So we have
yeah.
a question from chat for you. Can you tell us a bit about your poetry?
Oh, I mostly wrote poetry when I was younger, and I never showed anyone ever. Just playing back into the vulnerability
Mm.
um, piece. But when I started publishing my poetry, and I had two that were published recently with a whole group of BIPOC folks who I do writers retreats with here in Maine, at a place at an artist residency called Oaks. Um, Highly recommend it for any artists listening. They do take submissions from everyone all over, and it's lovely there. But uh, my friend who wrote the children's book been that I've illustrated that is coming out soon. I'm very excited about that. Um, is a poet. They're the poet laureate of Portland, Maya Williams,
Oh,
and they were like, you should for sure publish your poems. So I wrote two poems recently that were published. And one was about my grandmother because she has dementia, and I was kind of processing like the way that you think that someone is a constant in your life. And, you know, I related her to being like a tree to me. Like, you don't pass a tree and think that's going to not be there someday. Like, it feels eternal. So that's what that poem was about. And then another poem was kind of about, you know, like sapphic love, just being gay.
Just
Yay.
being gay.
Just being gay, just being a little gay. So, so yeah, I hope that answered your question. You can check them out on my Instagram. But I also illustrate a lot for poets. I really love illustrating for poems. It's my favorite thing to do. They're very abstract, conceptually.
I love that. Can you tell us a bit of the story behind the name BuffCat?
Yeah. So a few years ago, my grandmother's cat Alfredo was like the super cross-eyed, like muscly, like stocky cat, and I saw him and I was like, I'm gonna draw him how I picture him, and I drew this like.
Incredible.
Who did that? That's beautiful. Did you make that?
I don't know. Juice sent me this in the mail, and it's my favorite sticker that Juice has ever sent me, and it's on my cup that I drink out of every day. It's a muscly calico in board shorts for those who can't see.
That's
and are listening along at
incredible.
home.
I love it.
I love them.
In my,
Oh my
my
gosh, I
headcanon
feel
is that this is a trans masculine cat in my mind.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Wow. I mean, yeah, similar vibes, like a big buff boy, and I drew this like thick buff cat like laying like this in a bed of flowers. And then I was like, this is going to be my whole brand identity going forward, and I love this. And so I did that, but it was kind of like I was playing with gender even with that silly little drawing, I felt. So that was a part of it. Someone said, does that mean like, oh, maybe this isn't PG-13, but like they thought
it's
it was
for
like
educational purposes, YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for educational
like,
purposes.
I mean, yeah, I'm definitely only talking about a cat when I say buff pussy. Someone asked me if it meant buff pussy, like strong cat. So I wasn't that clever. I wasn't that interesting. It was genuinely wholesomely intended, but you know, sure. Yeah, that's what it meant.
The internet just slaps the horny lens on everything.
Yeah,
everything. Can I share something
Everything.
that's like maybe a little embarrassing for me? I was looking at your Instagram, and I was looking at some of, like, you know, the branding, and my brain read BuffCat as butt cat.
That's funny. There are buttholes. There's a lot of buttholes, so I'm not surprised.
Maybe highest compliment.
Yes.
So funny.
Maybe I need a rebrand.
Yes. It'll be like your secondary channel, like for
oh my god,
for butthole art only.
I actually have been
that's
like,
your spicy content IG handle.
That's what I was thinking of. Because I was thinking of making more spicy content for the gays, the girls, the theys, and the thems, you know. So
that's a free idea. You go ahead and take that.
Okay, I'll cite you. I will, Miranda. I'll be like, thank you for ButtCat. Like, thank you for ButtCat. Because that was not me. You know, I don't plagiarize.
Unlike white people, you don't steal.
Yeah, unlike certain specific white people who will not be named, I don't hate.
Oh boy, yeah, we had a whole plagiarism conversation in the green room, so which we will not get into on the show.
I was on fire, but
yes.
Yeah. If you know, you know. If you you know.
So, BuffCat, are there anything that is there anything that we didn't talk about regarding queer storytelling, square storytelling
Square.
that you want to make sure that you say?
I would like to say, um, sorry, I'm trying to put my words in order. I don't have like a filing system in my head. I had a friend who said they don't have like thoughts or sounds in their brains. Like they just say things and do things. And I didn't know that was possible.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
That's called being
Oh boy.
neurotypical.
Because like I'm the opposite. Like I have the unironic like Sherlock brain palace, like the mind palace. I
I wish it was that organized. I'm so sad that mine is like a
yes.
loud restaurant with like 5 songs playing and like
Yes.
someone screaming in the corner and like someone talking about
Yes.
their memories. It's a nightmare in there. So
ADHD.
it's like very cool. It's very cool
Yeah, like
being.
I have like the Count Dracula mansion in my head.
So you're like,
Yeah, I'm just
you
like
know, have you rewatched? I rewatched that like recently, and I was just so things that were not baffling to me at the time. I like took it at face value. The sound effects, that part where it's like it looks like an edit that someone would make as a joke. I can't believe Sherlock. Fever dream.
I haven't
It
watched it since it came out, so
it was I only rewatched it because someone was like, no, it was actually good because I rewatched it after I saw the last season and was like, that was the worst thing I've ever watched in my life.
yeah, oh boy, they sure made some creative choices.
That was so much. Oh my god, we probably don't have time to even talk about that,
Yeah.
but I could.
So we are just getting ready to wrap up with our wonderful guest today, BuffCat, she, he pronouns. Uh, so we were running a little late, so it's been a wonderful conversation, but you know, that's how it is. It's a live show. We're doing it live. But this next question that I have for you is actually my favorite one. Just because we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I really think that it's more important than ever to share our trans and queer joy. Can you share an experience with us that you've had with gender euphoria?
Oh, um, I think I really want to honor my younger, like, baby queer self a lot, and talk about the first time I felt like I kind of passed or like was perceived in a gender way that felt gender to me. I
Yeah.
think I was like 19 and I had some older queer friends who were like, do you want to come to this gay bar? And I was not obviously of age to be there, but they saw me approach and I borrowed some of my friends' clothing to go and be a boy for the night. I wanted to try. And they saw me and they were like, oh, you can go in. Like they looked at me like, we know you're underage, just like don't drink. And
Yeah.
I had this fantastic night at the gay bar with other queer people and it was probably one of the first times I felt like really affirmed in any way in my gender. At the time my hair was like much shorter, so I was kind of it just felt good. And you know, it was my first time like delving into that.
Mm.
So I think that was a good memory of gender euphoria that I carry.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sticks
What?
of Portland. It's not open anymore, but
No.
Oh.
BuffCat, what would you like to make sure that folks know about your perspective on gender, non-binary, trans, two-spirit, gender diverse issues?
um I think that it is a lifelong learning process to find out who you are, um, and that you can you can be who you want to be at the pace you want to be that person. So like I have friends who are like, "Oh, I'm trans," and like immediately decided to do all of the things. And then I have friends who are still learning, and I'm still learning things about myself and how I want to present my body and what that means to me. And I think um, it's whatever you want it to be. Like, I think that's the coolest thing about being queer or trans is like, I don't know, go girl, like do whatever you want. It's so fun being us. Like just enjoy it, you know? And like love being you, even if things around you make it really hard. And also, if I could say anything to my younger self about it, it would be, it's actually great. You know, outside of the exterior stuff, like it is so slay being us. So you should just like be us. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Lots of poop humor tonight.
Yes,
lots
that's
of
true.
pee-pee.
For more pee-pee poo-poo, and also maybe poems and books and illustrations and messages to his younger self, please check out BuffCat's Linktree, which is linktr.ee/art by BuffCat. You can also find BuffCat on Instagram at art by BuffCat. That's coming soon. Art by BuffCat.
See?
BuffCat.
It's catchy.
And BuffCat forever. They got him. Got him.
To be announced. BuffCat.
So, BuffCat, can you please share this week's Clatter query that our audience can answer on our social media platforms?
I really should wear my glasses. God, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I've been kind of like squinting at the chat this whole time. Please don't.
That's fair.
Okay.
Don't perceive.
Yeah. So I guess the question I have for you guys is, how does art help you be yourself and see yourself? And I'd love to see that. So.
It's a wonderful question. So friends, next week's Genderful guest is going to be Turaj Johnson Garay, excuse me, he, they pronouns, and we are discussing mental health, therapy, and self-expression. For community updates, Violet Mutual Aid was a rousing success with over $2,100 raised during the streams, and we've actually had a couple more donations roll in. If anyone would still like to donate to that, please do. Rosa Ilva is the one managing the link for that. And, you know, money for like bed or bedding or, you know, basic furniture after you move into a new place. Like we got enough money to basically get an empty room to sleep in, but now we need to put things in the room to make it more habitable. So, so any further donations are still being accepted. I will make sure that we put the link for that in the description because I don't have it memorized and I don't want to say it wrong and then have it not work for folks. But it will be a Pally GG link. Genderful would like to thank all of our supporters who support us on Patreon: Miranda Catita, Holly Blash, Winter Vespers, Loch Ness Gamer, Justin Baker Rojas, Yaicio, Ray of Swords, Mirami, The Hessian, and Trans Capybara. Now it's time for our outro. Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays on twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited versions of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you'd like the host to answer or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we are prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You can take a few minutes to rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Here's our artist credit. Genderful is hosted by Miranda and GenderMeowster. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful's live stream is produced by Mirami. Genderful is edited and mixed by Transgriffin and FreeRangeMegs. Genderful's promos and thumbnail graphic are designed by Transgriffin. Genderful's social media is managed by Kainsey. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by FreeRangeMegs, also known as Soma. The current GenderMeowster logo was designed by Siptopia. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved.
Trans rights are human rights. That's right.